Today, we're talking about preparing your garden for the next year. So one of the first methods we're going to prep today for our garden is one of the most common. It's raised bed gardening. Most people have raised beds in their backyard. My favorite type of gardening we'll talk about next, which is back to Eden gardening. So there's several ways to prep your garden for the new year. Doesn't matter what kind of gardening you're doing. They all pretty much follow the same principles. And it's pretty much three principles that they all follow. First one is get rid of all your weeds and unwanted growth and all the vegetation you don't want. Second is you till your garden. Thirdly, you add a layer of compost to give your soil nutrients so it's ready for the new year. Now as I go through and start clearing my garden and the weeds and everything, I'm going to go ahead and throw them in this bucket. Clear them out with this guy, throw all my weeds and all my scrap into this bucket, and I'll give them to the chickens. That way they can turn it into compost and I can use it next year. Now that we got all the weeds and all the grass cleared out and all the unwanted growth out of our raised beds, it's time for the next procedure, which is tilling. I don't actually till my garden. I do what's called no-tilling gardening. You pretty much put a pitchfork in and you lift your soil up, pull a pitchfork out, and then you just kind of keep going. Now that we got all our weeds and our unwanted growth removed from our beds and we got our beds nice and tilled up, we got our compost, and we're now just going to add a nice thin layer of compost over the top of both of our beds here so that they get nice good nutrients while it starts raining and everything. So this method of gardening is a lot like raised bed garden. So this method is called back to Eden garden. And so it follows the same principles as getting your raised beds ready. And those principles are weeding and getting rid of any unwanted growth, tilling your soil, and laying compost. Pretty simple. This one though, there's no tilling involved. Because I use wood chips as a top layer, it not only puts a top covering layer over your soil and keeps all the moisture and microorganisms in it, but it also acts as a filter for the chicken compost. Because chicken compost is too hot for most plants. And so it has to go through kind of a filtration process, which is the wood chips. So all I gotta do now is pick up all the weeds and unwanted growth in this area and then spread my chicken compost, and then we're done. Now that I got all the weeds and unwanted growth taken care of in this area, I can go ahead and start adding my compost and spread it around. Now that we got all the weeds and unwanted growth taken care of and we got a nice even layer of compost laid across, now all I've got to do is wait until it's time to garden. So once the chickens have had some time with the wood chips and the weeds and all the food scraps, it's time for me to harvest the compost that they've made. So I've made myself a little sift. All this is just 2x4s with some hardware cloth stapled to the bottom of it. You can either set it straight on top of your wheelbarrow or do as I did and build a little rack so that you can have the sift sit on a rack and your wheelbarrow just right underneath. Now the way I harvest it is I just shovel a couple scoops up into the sift, give it a good shake, dump out the big solids that didn't make it through, and then I'm left with nothing but nice compost down on the bottom. I got a bunch of solids up top that won't make it through the screen. Nice rich compost for the garden. And that's it. That's how easy it is to get your garden ready for the next year. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, give it a like. Go ahead and subscribe if you want more videos like this.